In this video, we're going to look at the proof of the similar triangles theorem. Remember that this theorem states if two triangles are equiangular, then the corresponding sides are in proportion and the triangles are similar. So what we've been given here are two triangles, triangle ABC and triangle DEF. And we have been told that angle A is equal to angle D, that angle B is equal to angle E, and that angle C is equal to angle F. So that's what we've been given. And we are required to prove that triangle ABC is similar to triangle DEF. So we start off with a construction. Okay, so the first thing is on AB, we're going to put P. So here's P. So that in fact, AP is equal to DE. And we're also going to put Q. So we're going to mark off that AQ is equal to DF. Then we construct the line PQ. So that's the next step here. We're going to draw the line PQ. I'm going to put it in there in another color so it stands out. So there's PQ. Okay, so we've done our construction. It's important to, when you learn a proof, don't just parrot learn it off word for word, because in a test or an exam, you're going to get different looking triangles that are labeled differently. So make sure you know what you're doing in each step. So we know that the first thing we did here was we did a construction. Okay, so that our first thing was a construction. Alright, so let's see the next thing we need to do. We actually now want to prove that those smaller triangles APQ and DEF are in fact congruent. So let's go about doing that. Here's our proof for congruency. Those are our next few steps. So in triangle APQ and DEF, those are smaller triangles. We know that AP is equal to DE. Remember we constructed that. We also know that angle A is equal to angle D. We were given that, and we know that AQ is equal to DF by construction, which is enough information to prove that in fact those small triangles APQ and DEF are congruent because of side angle side. Now don't forget this reason. It's important that you do put your congruency reason in. So this was the second thing we needed to do. So remembering it in chunks is going to help you. This thing is, the step is that we proved the triangles congruent. So we prove the smaller triangles congruent. Okay, cool. So they're congruent. So what? What does that tell us? We now know that because they are congruent, angle P1 is equal to angle E. Let's have a look. So we called this P1. So we know that in fact this angle here, P1, is equal to angle E, because congruent triangles have angles that are equal in size. So P1 is equal to E. However, we know, we stated right at the beginning that angle E is equal to angle B. But we also said now that angle E is equal to P1. So we can conclude that angle P1 is equal to angle B. Which then leads us on to parallel lines. So we know because, let's go back up here, because this angle here, P1, is equal to that angle there, B, then line PQ must be parallel to line BC. That's from a previous theorem. Yeah, well, a theorem that you learned probably in grade 8. That because these corresponding angles are equal, those lines must be parallel. Now in your handout, this reason wasn't given. I think it was just left off. So just fill in corresponding angles equal. So what did we do in this step? Well, we showed that we had parallel lines, so that was the next thing you did. Show that you have parallel lines. Cool, so now we know because these lines are parallel, so because PQ is parallel to BC, we can then conclude that sides in this triangle are proportional, that this line divides sides in proportion. So we now know that AP divided by AB is equal to AQ divided by AC, and that's from a theorem that you did this year, line parallel to one side of triangle. Okay, so we know that they're equal because line is parallel to one side of triangle. However, hang on a second. However, we know, let's go on to your next page. But we know that AP is equal to DE, that AQ is equal to DF. So just replace in your numerator, let's just go back a second. So in this numerator, you are going to go back, and instead of writing AP, you're going to write DE. And instead of writing AQ, you're going to write DF. So that's our next step. So therefore we have proven that sides are in proportion in those two triangles. Now, you might be stopping and asking yourself, but hang on a second, so that's only two of the sides in proportion. How would we do the third side? Well, if you went through this whole process again, but instead you put an X and you marked BX equal to DE on side AB, but then you went to side BC, which is the side we didn't go to in the previous bit of the proof, and you marked, for example, BY equals EF, then you could do the whole process again to get those other two sides in proportion. Now, if you're asked to do this entire proof, which you wouldn't always be asked to do everything in a test or an exam, you might not need to do this last bit. But if you do need to do everything, it's legit. It's fine to say similarly by, because that similarly means by doing the exact same process but using a different side or a different angle, etc. Then we would come to a similar outcome. Then we would get all three sides in proportion. But we also know that the angles are equal, so we know that those triangles are similar. Right, so that's the proof. Now let's just have a look at a past paper question where they ask this proof, just so you can see what it could look like asked in an exam. This comes from, I think it was the 2012 government paper. Okay, but bearing in mind it was paper 3 because it was before the new curriculum. But just so you have an idea of how it's asked. So in this one it says, if in triangle LMN and triangle FGH it is given that L equals F and M equals G, and then obviously they don't state it, but the third angles in the triangles must be equal. Prove the theorem that states that LM divided by FG is equal to LN divided by FH. In other words, that those sides are in proportion. See, they haven't asked you the whole thing, so you wouldn't have to do the whole similarly part, but you would go through the process. I've included the memo here as well, so my advice is maybe if you want to try it, you go back here, pause the video, have a look, or take a screenshot, try it yourself, and then you can look at the memo. I've just made one or two changes with regards to reasons, because sometimes reasons are worded slightly different in the Department of Education papers. But you see the whole process is here again. You have to do a construction. So that's here, here's your construction. Then you have to prove your congruency. There it is. Then you make the conclusions from the congruency in order to get the parallel lines. There they are, here's your parallel lines. And then you make your conclusion. I just added in this little bit here because I think we need to say but the sides are actually equal, and then you get to your conclusion. So that's a way that it's asked in the test or an exam. Make sure you know your proofs, because there are 3 marks in a test or an exam. You know that they're coming. Happy studying!